Welcome to the Innovation Ecosystem Podcast. We interview remarkable and thought-provoking guests about innovation, leadership, and change in the world of business. Whether you're an executive or an entrepreneur, our objective is to help you and your organisation create an entrepreneurial culture, become more innovative and better able to respond to change. Each week, we'll deconstruct world-class performance from the arenas of business, academia, science and sports. Each week, you can expect key insights, fresh perspectives and proven tools you can use straight away to make you more successful professionally and personally. With your hosts, Mark Bidwell and Roddy Miller.
My guest today is Christoph Goppelsroeder, President and CEO of DSM Nutritional Products. I've known Chris for many years, having worked with him at Syngenta, and have always been impressed by how he's managed to deliver his short-term numbers and, at the same time, to create a culture that values innovation and calculated risk-taking. And he does this by creating enormous loyalty in his team. So he describes what this means for him as a leader of the 12,000 people in his business, as well as the role that curiosity and collaboration plays in embedding innovation in the DNA of a global market leader like DSM. Right. Well, with me today is Christoph Goppelsroeder, who is President and CEO of DSM Nutritional Products, which is a $5 billion company with a long tradition of innovation. So thank you and welcome to the Innovation Ecosystem Podcast.
Thank you, Mark.
So I think, Chris, if we can start, can you just tell us a little bit about DSM, what and the role that innovation plays in the business?
So DSM is overall about a $7.5 billion company, $8 billion company, and out of which the large part, as you mentioned, is nutrition. We produce and sell nutritional ingredients, micro-ingredients. Those are the ones that really keep you healthy, both us as humans, but also animals. And we do that since a long period of time. We once came out of Roche, the company here where we sit right now in Basel, Switzerland, and has now seen a lot of acquisitions in the meantime. And we are busy in animal nutrition, we are busy in human nutrition, and actually even in personal care. So beauty comes also into the picture.
Okay, and I mean, I guess I would imagine that this is an industry that's undergoing quite a lot of change as, for instance, in the context of beauty, there's a lot of developments in terms of longevity science, ethnic blending, changing gender roles. I mean, how does the company keep ahead of these trends? And as we were saying earlier on, you've got a number of assets here with many, many years of physical life ahead of them. How do you, more importantly, I guess, design your long-term plan given the uncertainty of the consumer changes, if you like?
I mean, Mark, if I understand correctly, the two underlying mega trends that really kind of keep us on our tippy toes, if I can say, one is health, keeping a healthy life, health maintenance instead of the treatment. So instead of correcting afterwards and something got wrong, can you do something before? Mm-hmm. And the other one, and you will be probably quite interested to hear that after Paris, sustainability. Because some of these businesses that we are in also need quite some thoughts and corrective thoughts, given what has happened recently in Paris. Innovation is the number one story for the long-term development of this business. But actually, innovation is also the key motivator for people here in the company itself. Doing something for the company, i.e. growth, profitability, but doing something beyond that. Mm-hmm. We call this internally the DNA of DSM. And what we mean with that is every company has values. We all know them. They're normally printed on nice A4 format, normally very shiny. And when you read them, one company looks like the other. So what we mean is, what do we really live, not only print? And I think we have a few extraordinary DNA items that matter to the heart. Mm-hmm. And when you come to the question of how do people see DSM, people that are in the company or people that want to join, this is a very much to the heart topic. Mm-hmm. And if I can quickly say the three that I think we are really living As we go back to the former mining industry, DSM is Dutch state mines. We don't have any mines anymore. We're not state-owned. Therefore, the whole acronym is a bit a story in itself. But so safety is a key issue. And safety goes before anything else. No matter what in an event, you first talk about safety. And that really goes to the heart of people. So we constantly have the behavioral aspects, but also the more asset and CapEx related elements of safety. And we measure this not only about us, but also about contractors. How safe are we? How many people go home the same way as they came to work? And it is so important and so upfront that this is part of our actually financial reward system in a big way. But the one that probably even comes more across as special is we actually, with our background of micronutrients and health, we have engaged with malnutrition. We call this hidden hunger in the world since more than 30 years. Micronutrients can help for eye vision, vitamin A, for example, but even more for stunting. Stunting is when children stay small because the micronutrient deficit that they have doesn't allow them to grow. And when they don't grow, they have no economic future. They have no private future. They have no future at all. So we engage in that. And we're actually the only partners of NGOs and big institutes like the World Global Food Program, the World Food Program, the Clinton Institute, the Clinton Initiative, the Gates Foundation, etc., etc. So this is a tradition for over 13 years, and we take this very seriously. We also spend quite some money on that. The other one is sustainability. And when you think about animal protein production, sounds kind of very natural, right? But even natural animals create problems in themselves. And you might have heard of it. For example, ruminants, cows, emit
methane.
Methane.
Vast quantities, yes.
Yeah. And methane gas is a typical greenhouse gas, but in contrast to CO2, it is degradable within 8 years instead of more than 200. So if we can do something on methane, it has a quicker feedback loop and a betterment for the world rather than CO2. And funny enough, or not so funny enough, animals, ruminants, cows, emit about 15 to 20% of global methane emissions. So can we do something about that? Is a center stage, for example. Or the other one is...
Can we in terms of DSM?
Yeah. And we do. Yeah. And we might come to that. It's about innovation. And the other one is talking about fish, also an animal protein. It's a big topic. Salmon, for example, a big category of fish that we eat for health reasons. And the health is the omega-3s that they contain. But farmed fish need omega-3 feeding. Where do you get that omega-3 from? Do you outfish the oceans and then you have another problem, or do you create it otherwise? These kind of thinkings on a long-term sustainability level is not only about innovation, it's about capturing the heart of employees and future employees. It makes a huge difference with the younger people if you can talk about those things and it comes from the heart and they can feel it, they can see it, and it's also part of the financial system that we have here.
So when you came into this role 2.5 years ago, or thereabouts, was there anything that you noticed about the culture and about this DNA that sort of struck you when you first arrived? Actually,
I would say the SHE culture, the safety culture, is very prominent. It's so prominent that it really hits you hard. Let me tell you a little story. I came back and I walked with a few people, by the way, all marketing and sales, not production. I walked up the steps and didn't hold the rail. It took basically 5 seconds until somebody told me that. I think about it, I'm the new CEO and somebody walks with me. It takes quite guts to tell me this. Not that I think so big of myself, but it's kind of typical. So if somebody dares to say that, it's kind of a quick DNA thing that happens. and from a marketing person. So the kind of the full-blown understanding of the behavioral aspects of SHE are completely intrinsic in this company. When you look at the sustainability, it's probably a hit that, or something, a recognition that came a bit later.
Okay. So in the sort of 30 months or so that you've been in the role, what have you done as the leader of this business? I don't know how many people are in the business, in your business?
About 12,000.
So how do you sustain this DNA? And I suppose more specifically, are there certain things that you have been trying to change about the culture to make it better oriented towards some of these mega trends that you referred to earlier on?
I think everyone has a different way of doing these things, so there's not a good or a bad. It's just a style question. My style is, I'm a very curious person. I'm very interested in innovation, and I can only live with planning ahead if I have a bit of finger in the mud or feet in the mud. I cannot live by nice, shiny presentations. I need to feel it.
Okay. How do you do that? How did you do that then?
Which happens in a number of ways. One is that I interview new people. And I interview new people a lot in innovation as well. Especially because I'd like to understand a bit better where they're coming from, if they bring newness in their way of doing things to the company. That is especially important because we have an R&D organization that goes back a long time, and therefore fresh blood doesn't come in every day. The second one is I normally tend to get input and then create some new discussion rounds, always cross-functional, not only R&D, but also the business. Business here, but also business locally, let's say in regions and countries, to understand better the interaction between the markets and our innovation. And that is particularly important when it comes to the radical information, not so much the incremental, the customer specific, the day-to-day, the little improvements that are so important in business, but more the radical ones where we kind of embark on large programs. Do we really understand the needs? Because going to customers and asking them will not succeed. They don't know either. So you need to know more than that. And that needs curiosity, that needs a hang for the business, that needs to, you need to understand the big and the small and the important and the non-important. And last but not least, it means that you need to take a leap of faith sometimes. That's the great thing about innovation. You don't know yet. There's no guarantee in life. And when you need to take a leap of faith, then you can't delegate that. You need to do that yourself sometimes, especially the big bets in life. Don't think you can delegate that. And that asks for that involvement. Now, here is a very simple truth. I just think innovation is also, as they say in Germany, Chefsache. If you only delegate innovation to somebody else, even worse, to a function, that's absolute sin in my view. But if you delegate it, you basically delegate the risk. And the lower down in the organization it is, the risk that they can take and are willing to take is smaller. So your risk-taking automatically goes down, and therefore you should not be surprised if then what should be radical innovation becomes also incremental.
So are there any examples of radical innovation or disruption that you have, or prospect of disruption that you've actually noticed and have enabled your organisation to explore and put in place a strategy to confront it or to manage it? And is there anything that we can talk about that's in the public domain? So I'm curious, I guess, to understand that, because that's a very, very important point as to the extent to which you, as the leader of the organisation, actually own it 100% viscerally, and everyone understands that. Because in many organisations, as you rightly say, it gets pushed down, and it's someone else's job, and nothing really happens. You get incremental, and you also get the fear of failure associated with thinking, well, I'm going to be held accountable if this doesn't work. And clearly, most innovation carries significant risk.
Yeah. No, it's always there, and to a certain extent, leaders are risk takers or not risk takers, but even those that are called risk takers, sometimes they kind of have a hands-off culture towards innovation. And it's not necessarily because they don't want to take the risk there, it's just they don't feel comfortable in that environment. But I just love it. That doesn't mean I'm perfect in it, but I like it very much. And to your specific question, maybe 2 examples. I think we talked already about methane gas emissions of cows. This topic was always a topic from the know-how point of view that this is an issue. Over the last years, obviously, it has gained in importance tremendously, and so it went from a push to a pull situation. At some point in time, we made the decision that we need to find a bit, how should you say, you need to find a solution to also protect your business. Because animal protein production, there's some loud voices that say, we just stopped to eat meat. Actually, we should become all vegan, not vegetarian, vegan. That will not happen. First of all, I hope it doesn't happen, because then half of the fun of life is gone. But it's also, vegan is very dangerous. If you understand the healthy aspects of veganism, you really need to be watching this like being in a hospital to not go wrong. Mankind has been defined as it is by a smarter body somewhere, with all of those kind of diet elements that we have today. And if you just limit that to 1/3 of it, you have to really watch it. So we need to also find a way to protect our business, but even more so the diet that we all love. And so methane gas emissions has become an issue. We went specifically about that. I went specifically about that with a clear view in mind what we want to achieve, but much more importantly, with everybody in the boat to the top. A decision to do that, because as you can imagine, this is a radical innovation approach. This does not come through a bit of reformulating some vitamins. We need to have a new molecule that is not going to be just an element of nature. We need to look into that in the safety and efficacy way, nearly like a pharmaceutical company. And we're still busy with it. We are maybe 2 years before launch, but it has gone from a push to a pull. So we started to put the necessary resources in, and guess what? We moved it as a push project, right? Because innovation often is about push. Because we didn't understand the pull mechanisms, and because they didn't show so much of an interest at the time. Over time, this pull has become much stronger. So it was discussed in Newsweek, in Time, in the Times, the New York Times, and so forth. So it's called Clean Cow, and has garnered quite a lot of attention. But over the last 12, 18 months, it has reached a different level of attention. A lot from governments, a lot from farming organizations, a lot from NGOs. Because they see in that a potential good, hopefully not a quick fix, but a fix to part of the problem. And we're not used to this kind of influence, even if it's positive, to the pull, right? So when we developed it, we looked at a lot. If you reduce methane gas emissions, building on famous energy balance, right? Where does the energy then go? So we built, and we saw that actually it goes into higher protein in milk, meat, let's say the whole weight gain of the cow being accelerated, right? So it's kind of moving energy from something that you don't want into some place that you, which obviously is a push value versus the pull value of methane gas emissions. And we're now in the next step where we say, how do we take this positive feedback that we only kind of felt over the last 6 months and make it worthwhile for this project? And guess what? This has nothing to do with innovation management. This has nothing to do with a head of innovation. It has a lot to do with the whole corporation, even, certainly with me involved, trying to create these pull organizations, which are not DSM organizations, DSM in it, but NGOs in it, government in it, farm organizations in it, right? So you need to turn this whole thing around, and it's a completely different business model.
Yeah.
I've never seen this before.
So, from your point of view, it changes your role radically.
Changes it radically.
And presumably that of some of your team members as well.
Yeah.
So how do you go about getting your mind around that? I mean, what mindset do you need? How do you need to shift your mindset and the mindset of some of your people to embrace this new, essentially, way of working? The reason I'm asking is for listeners who have similar situations or who are being asked to operate in a completely different way in their organisations. They might be interested in your experience because you're living this at the moment, it sounds like.
I'm really going through that element right now, and as you probably know, big flocks of ruminants are not a situation that you have in the whole of the world. You have a certain number of countries that play a big role, which is helpful. Huh? So you don't think about the global situation, but you think about several local situations. So you think about Western Europe, typically. You think about California. You think about Brazil, although much less dairy, much more beef cattle. You think about Australia, New Zealand, etc., right? And all these countries are different. All these countries are different in their setup. All these countries are different when it comes to who is playing the big fiddle in the triangular situations of the government and the regulatory bodies that go with it, the farm organizations and the commercial organizations, right?
And by fiddle, you mean orchestration versus the English?
Who are the drivers? Who are the... Sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Who are the drivers? Who are the modernists? And who are the cautious hold-backers, the conservatives? In the context of methane gas emissions, who are the ones that want to drive that? Who are eager to play this role and actually bring the modernity into their country, who is then linking with the regulatory authorities to make that happen, right? But also who has the gain. And I don't mean commercial gain, who has the gain in fame.
Who's that?
And there, the global competitiveness comes into the picture, because competitiveness is not only between companies, it's also between governments. And when it comes to the whole implementation of what Paris is all about, as we all know, it's not about anymore if we want to do it, but how and how fast. There's quite some competitiveness that is emerging. And countries want to be first. How do you use that leverage? And I'm not yet there that I can say how we are doing it, because we are not yet there. But it will be an interesting feature. How do you leverage the competitiveness of nations, as somebody once said? I think everybody knows who. How do you leverage that in a world that is really different? And it challenges me a lot. It challenges my organization a lot. And it becomes very local. How do you make it happen in New Zealand? Completely different picture than how you make it happen in Brazil.
Interesting.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
So if we can switch gears a little bit, in terms of how you lead your team, I mean, when we worked together, I was in a previous organisation, I was always impressed by how you were able to create the space for the right kind of conversations to happen in your leadership team. And I'm interested in any advice for people who are trying, for instance, to encourage their team to be more innovative, to be more creative, to be more agile. How do you go about it? How do you create this space for these conversations to happen, to embrace the unknown? Any tips that you can give, or any lessons that you've learned as to how not to do it?
I think in the end, what I can say here is less about advice, more about style. Everybody in this organization knows that I'm hugely interested in the new. And that innovation captures my mind, and if you come to me with something interesting, I will listen, no matter which part of the day it is. I also don't keep an agenda that has every day filled to the roof on purpose, because that allows me to be fast and also allows me these excursions that I sometimes need to understand a bit better. A lot also about innovation. I think that people know that makes already a difference, because it therefore reaches a certain importance in the organization. That I'm interested, that I kind of in love with innovation, and that this means something for me. I think the other one is that when you have risk-taking going on, the one time that it shows whether this is done in a positive way or not is not when the success happens, it's when the failure happens. How do you treat people that have gone on a risky trail, most of the time even by asking you also, right? How do you treat people when things go wrong is very telling. And will be talked about in the organization much more than successes. We have to be absolutely clear about that.
So how do you think about that?
And the point about that is then, do you help them to get out of that? Do you help them to sort things out? Or are you basically giving up on them, not the project only, but also on them? So is there life beyond? I think that is makes a huge difference. I think the other one is that I often engage in these discussions in quite, how should I say, giving it quite a bit of time. So I spend time with multiple rounds of people in business, R&D, innovation in the bigger sense, and externals to debate topics. Example, not only those sustainability examples, but another one in our health maintenance, in our kind of working towards a healthy life kind of sphere. The question is, how do people know that they are healthy in what they do? And the diagnostics evolution or revolution will also play a big role. So in other words, what do people do in 2 years, 3 years from now to measure whether their micronutrient level is adequate or not? Today, most of them don't. And even if they do, they get a feedback 2-3 weeks after somebody has taken blood and gave it in for analysis. Most people have no patience, nor a recollection that they did that. So when the thing is coming back in, you don't do anything with it. So the world is changing now. Diagnostics is changing. It gets extremely simple, cheap
and rapid,
fast response, non-invasive, right? It's not kind of the syringe that comes out and everybody already feels weak when they see the big syringe. So this is all changing. It will lead to the fact that people will measure, store, and look at their data like they do today with many things on their iPhone. They will also have very nice data about that. As you probably know, many people already have very good data about their physical exercise that they do every day. Right? Some people do that already with their watches. Some people do that with their iPhones. But in 10 years from now, everybody will watch very much how their micronutrient levels look like in the blood. Now, that can be very good news for our business. It can also be tremendously bad news for our business, because we need to take into account how quickly our products actually enter the bloodstream, how quickly they are effective, even if you take what is called the daily dose, right, that you get recommended. And the interesting part is you all of a sudden don't think anymore only about the micronutrient itself, but how do you progress the micronutrient in the way from intake, mostly oral, to bloodstream. And it opens up a new innovation sphere that we have not thought about that much. When you think about it, somebody once said, what gets measured gets done, right? And now measurement is coming. What do people do? How much patience do they have? And it will be interesting to see how we deal with that. If we would deal with that with a very functional R&D innovation approach, we would, and we did, get it very much wrong. If you think collectively about that sphere, it looks different. Now, how did that work that we got that into this company? not by asking the innovation to do the best they can. It's by talking with people about that and giving that environment, and then asking them to think about innovation within that.
Yeah. And in that environment, when you say talking to people, I guess, I think you mentioned to me the other day that it's very unlikely that you'd have all the right people around a table at the same time that would come from the organisation. In other words, the importance of collaborating with third parties was key for the organisation. How do you think about external collaborations and co-creation with different stakeholders? You touched a little bit on the ruminant example, but more from a commercial perspective. Any insights in terms of how do you make yourself easy to do business with as a company, but also how do you reach out to potential collaboration partners and identify them?
I think that's a very important element because I think it's very clear. Size of a company still does not matter that much. It's speed of a company that matters. And speed is nothing else than having the right capabilities at the right time, at the right quantity available. And the likelihood that you have that, especially if innovation goes maybe partly or entirely away from your core, the likelihood that you don't have the right capabilities is more than 100%.
Yeah.
So what do you do then? Do you want to have everything for yourself and therefore you go on a lengthy spree to find all of these talents and build it up? Or do you collaborate? Obviously hinges on the fact also about the question of where's the IP, right? But let's assume the IP is settled in the right way. I found that collaborating can be extremely beneficial, but collaborations are not a spreadsheet. Collaborations are, build-up of trusting relationships between two organizations on different levels, from the top to all the different key streams that you want to attack in a project. These relationships need to be good. So this famous talk about is there a cultural fit is much more worthy of discussion than most people think. In the end, the cultural fit can make a project fly or kill it, even if you have the best setup, the best technology. If the two companies don't understand each other, are not willing to commit, it's very difficult. And it means that to a certain extent, again, you as a leader need to be involved. You need to be involved to create another relationship that you need to care about. Yeah. A relationship where you can call over a weekend and say, I have a problem. Can we quickly discuss? Not a relationship where you need 2 months or 3 months to have an appointment. And these relationships take time. They need energy, but they're extremely rewarding. And quite often in innovation, you might see that other companies move a bit in the same direction as yourself. In such a moment, creating an industry standard together rather than competing with each other and having both not the right resources makes a lot more sense. So it's all about speed. But culture matters, and this involvement is, I found, very rewarding. So a lot of people have different views on that. Some people call it giving profit away. Some people say it's a huge hassle. I have not seen that. There's a lot of hassle within an organization between functions. At least in most organizations it is like that. We call this the cross-functional trauma. But if you're good at it, it can also be used towards the outside, and it's really refreshing.
Yeah. Well, and particularly given the pace of change in some of your markets, as you say, one needs to be as quick as possible to respond to these changes, and the likelihood is that you're not going to have all the capabilities that you need within your four walls.
One thing, especially in the European culture, I mean, a Brazilian would say, go away, this is so clear, I don't need to discuss it. But we have normally the culture of saying the glass is half empty.
In Europe.
In the US, they say it's half full, and in Brazil, they say it's overflowing, right? So celebrating successes, like doing a pipeline review with an event. The pharmaceutical industry is very good about that, right? There's their livelihood, right? You never see them doing an exhibition on marketing tools. They're talking about their pipeline. It's a big event. We should do much more. We should take innovation that serious. By the way, all the way, the financial analysts. Because if you really take care of your innovation funnel, if you really think you have big projects and you can explain them, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Despite the fact that the analysts are, this is one of my questions which we haven't got to, but very quickly, analysts focus on quarterly numbers. How do you balance that versus the, many of your projects, I'd imagine, have multi-year time horizons, 10, 15, 20-year planning horizons. How do you encourage your team to hold those two tensions?
Yeah, it's not that lengthy, as you say. So we're not in the pharmaceutical industry where you typically talk 10, 15 years. With us, it's more, you can create a lot within 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
If you have a certain forerun or pre-run and build this up. So actually it would be very helpful. I think we are a bit timid in it because normally financial analysts only want to listen to these kind of stories if all the rest is in order. In our industries, they don't see that as the thing going forward. They see that as one thing going forward. And therefore, your house needs to be perfectly in order for them to listen. Otherwise, they say, that's all nice that you talk about that, but actually we want to know how your EBITDA in quarter 3 went.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first hurdle. But once you get there, the good companies, the ones that really are successful in their operations day to day and quarter to quarter, they more and more also in our specialty chemicals, specialty business tend to talk about their pipeline. And I think the good thing about that is it puts much more pressure on you to deliver.
Yes.
And I think that's good. Some people see that as bad, but it also means that you need to think much more about it, how you set it up. In other words, you have not limited resources. Which projects do you actually put the money in? What kind of story do you have to tell? And then it becomes center stage. And that's where innovation should be.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Very helpful. So just wrapping this up, the last couple of questions which I prompted you, gave you a warning of a few minutes ago. Your morning or your daily rituals, do you have any specific daily rituals? You touched on one of them, which is keeping your calendar free. But what slugs of your calendar free? Do you have any specific daily rituals that you really try and focus on to be able to maintain the pace and the productivity and the culture that you have done here?
Yes, certainly. There's a bit of a roaming of the corridors, if I can say, that I do, and I do it not only to have the contact, but also, quite interesting enough, new ideas come in by somebody saying, hey, have you seen this? And hey, now that you're walking by, can I quickly show you that and that? Hugely helpful. Besides, I just like to walk around. It gives me the feeling of being part of something bigger and not closed in my office and in meetings. So I really enjoy that. And I think it helps also to create that back and forth. Now that is me specifically. Obviously, other people have different rituals and they also work. It's not the only one. But that is one of my favorite ones. The other one is that I routinely have contacts with regions. But not the business people in the region, but we have also people from DSM that are kind of the presidents of a region. Because they don't have a business responsibility, sometimes they are not taken fully seriously. But they are excellent locals. They're always locals. And they have a lot of insight about markets, about trends and stuff. I tend to have a close link with those guys. And I enjoy that very much. And
to fulfill your curiosity, which you referred to earlier on.
Yes. Yeah. They talking with a Chinese national that lives his life in China, is the president of DSM in China, about the Chinese developments of the last 1 or 2 months, is highly inspiring. And the same is true for the US, same is true for Latin America, and so forth.
Okay. Second question, what have you changed your mind about recently, Chris?
Yeah. Oh, it's about sustainability. About 2 years ago, I still thought there are the two things. One is the making profit, and the other one, and making profit and putting your mind to it, your brains to it, and then do something for sustainability and putting your heart to it, right? Kind of having two avenues, a business avenue and a sustainability avenue. Boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. I think today I would say these avenues are the same. They're on top of each other. One doesn't work without the other. I told you 2 examples in animal nutrition, animal protein production, but it is also in human. It's generally everywhere the case, and this hit me like a rock over the last 6 months. How much sustainability is part of absolute business life today. Besides that, I think we all understand that Paris can't have really an impact if the private sector doesn't get really involved. I think no government, no politicians will solve this for us.
Yeah. Okay. And the third question, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
I would like to ask that to you, Mark, too, as we have been together sometime in our careers. I started as a civil engineer, and I'm now in a total different sector. It was not a plan. It was a happening. And I think letting go of the plan and be floated by what happens and see what interests you would still be high on my list. At the time when I started with civil engineering, it was the lowest number of starters at the university. Nobody wanted to do civil engineering. I didn't think about whether this will provide me with a lot of cash at the end of the day. I had no clue. It doesn't matter. If you have the heart for it, if you have the mind for it, if you have the passion for it, I think I would still subscribe to that. And by the way, my kids are getting to that age. They're not yet 25, they are younger, but we never discuss what I would do. The topic is always, where's your passion? It's the only thing that counts.
Yeah.
I don't know if that resonates with you, but for me, there's no truth in that regard.
Yeah. No, I mean, it resonates with me, and it also resonates with some of the people I've interviewed earlier on for this show. I mean, it's a very consistent message or theme coming out of that question when I ask it. So, excellent. So, final question, where can people get in touch with you? And we can include, for instance, your LinkedIn profile to the in the show notes. Is that the best?
That is certainly the best once I have cleaned it up a bit. My LinkedIn profile is, let's say it, not really professional. So I would have to clean it up. But once that is done, that is certainly the preferred access.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll put that in the show notes along with some of the other materials about the company. So Chris, this has been a great pleasure talking to you today. I mean, I really enjoyed our talk, as I'm sure our listeners will. And thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. There was certainly a roller coaster through all your questions. I liked it very much. It's the new that counts. And I love the new, and I see it, feel it in your eyes and how you behave, that we are very much akin on that. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks.
As I reviewed the transcript, a couple of things jumped out at me. First, Chris explains why delegating disruptive innovation just doesn't work. The further down the organisation the work is pushed, the more the ideas get watered down, and the less willing people are to take the inevitable risks associated with anything disrupting and threatening the status quo. This is a classic reason why so much innovation fails in large companies, because leadership doesn't truly own it. Chris, it's clear, rolls up his sleeves and gets stuck into the work. And when the problems do arise and things don't go as planned, a leader has 2 choices. You can either help to sort it out, or you give up on the individuals. Chris's style is to support the team through thick and thin, and I saw this firsthand working alongside with him in Syngenta. Now, my other takeaway was around his leadership team and how it thinks about collaborating with third parties. As Chris says, the size of a company is not nearly as important as the speed of a company, and being good at managing collaborations increases an organisation's speed and agility. So for a business like DSM, becoming excellent at collaborating with third parties is a key competitive advantage. Next week, Roddy interviews Stephen McGregor, founder of the Leadership Academy in Barcelona and a former duathlon champion who's trained with Tour de France riders and Ironman winners. And in the meantime, head over to our website, innovationecosystem.net, all one word, where you can download the transcript. You can also see the show notes as well as sign up for our newsletter. And if you like this episode, please do go onto iTunes and write a review. These shows take time and energy to make, and we really would like to hear from you and to get our work out into the innovation ecosystem. And this will help executives and entrepreneurs to benefit from the work we're doing and the wisdom of our guests. So thanks again for your time and have a good week.